This has serious implications for the New York Mets. Francisco Alvarez just went down with another recurring injury right as he was starting to find his zone and get hot offensively. So stay tuned only here on Mets Digest for the details. I'm your host today, Mike Duda. We're going to talk about the former #1 overall prospect in baseball's thumb. But first, we got to talk about some subscribers, and that being the fact that 69.4% of you that watch these videos aren't one. So please do me a favor, do us a favor here at Mets Digest, and hit that free subscribe button. That way we can bring content to you about the amazing. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right in. Kicking it off with the injury itself. This was in last night's game. A 7-3 victory on national stage. Sunday Night Baseball, the Little League Classic. The Mets took 2 out of 3 from the Seattle Mariners. Hopefully, oh so hopefully, is this the turning point that the Mets need to go on a run, to go make the playoffs, and hopefully go far in the playoffs. Again, take it one game by game. Take it series by series, but this is a very good start. However, there was a damper, and that is, of course, the injury to Alvarez on a leadoff double in the bottom of the 7th. And like I've mentioned, and like we're going to dive into later today, this is bad because Alvarez is scorching hot. He is hitting so well since that month that he spent in AAA in the minor leagues, trying to gain his swing back, trying to gain his confidence back, and everything Francisco Alvarez that the former #1 overall prospect in baseball promised us. And this is devastating because right after he gets hot, there comes that injury, and it's another injury to his hand. This time it is his right thumb, and we'll get the details in just a second. Here are the details of that double. It was his second double of the game. He had an RBI double back in the second. Mets ended up scoring 7 runs. Their offense has been great. Alvarez absolutely pieced this ball up. Now, the good news is he did stay in the game. After he slid in, he called for time. You could tell that he's clearly in some pain and some discomfort. However, he stayed in the game after meeting with the trainers and manager Carlos Mendoza. After a little break, he stayed in for 10 more pitches, the rest of the inning. It was a leadoff double. Then Brett Baty had a 3-pitch strikeout. He stayed in on the base paths for that. He advanced to third on a 1-pitch Mark Vientos groundout, and then a 6-pitch flyout at bat for Cedric Mullins. So Alvarez stayed in for a total of 10 pitches and advanced a base, but he ended up coming out of the game, and we'll hear from the skip about why. But first, let's turn it over to the skip for a different reason. He is going to talk about the severity of Alvy's injury, saying right now, we don't know what we're dealing with, but we just gotta wait now. So with that, let's turn it over to Ben Krimmel of SNY. He's going to add some narration in between these quotes from Mendy, saying he did not add, that being Mendoza, if Alvarez would then travel to Washington to reunite with the club, which heads to the nation's capital to open a 3-game series against the Nationals on Tuesday, that being tomorrow. When asked how concerning the injury is due to the catcher's history with hand injuries throughout his career, he missed some time in 2024 due to a torn ligament in his left thumb and missed the start of this season with a broken bone in his left hand. We'll talk about all these injuries in just a bit. Here was the skip's reaction. He said, "It's concerning. I'm not going to lie. It's the 3rd time, but I'm not going to sit here and speculate because we don't know what we're dealing with." Now, I have harped on the manager countless times. I personally don't like him as a manager. I just don't think he has the standards to manage for a team that can go win the World Series. However, I agree, and I like what he has to say in the postgame here, even though I usually don't like what he has to say. He admits it. He says, yes, it's concerning, but I don't want to speculate. He's not a doctor. His job is to make the lineup card and to make pitching changes, not to evaluate injuries. So good job there saying he's not going to speculate, and we'll get into something in just a bit when I also agree with Mendoza on a different front, and that being why Alvarez ended up coming out of the game. But first, let's turn it back to Krimmel, who's going to discuss what happened next in this game, saying the injury occurred in the home half of the 7th inning when Alvarez cracked his 3rd hit of the game with a double off the wall and right, just beating the throw with a head-first slide. Again, when you go with a feet-first slide, you're less likely to be injured, but a head-first slide is more efficient in terms of getting to the base quicker and therefore being safe more often, as on the slide, he appeared to jam his right thumb into the bag. Alvarez immediately called for time and was examined by the Mets training staff, but stayed in the game to run the bases. Like we said, that was 10 total pitches. He stayed in there for 3 outs. He advanced to third base. He advanced as far as third before he was stranded there. When it came time for the top of the 8th inning, Luis Torrens was behind the plate. So what happened afterwards? Well, Krimmel goes on to say Mendoza said that Alvarez's grip had, quote, some strength, end quote, when he was examined on the field, but it was the manager who decided to lift the catcher before he came in to play defense. Now, why? There was a conversation between Mendoza and Alvarez, and Mendy in the postgame discussed it, saying Alvy was like, I'm good. Then after the innings, he's like, let me play catch. That basically meaning, let me take some warm-up reps. Let me see if I can throw, because it was on his throwing hand that he had the injury. So it's fine. He can catch well. If the injury was on his left hand, it would have been a concern if he was catching 90, 100 miles an hour. It doesn't matter who was pitching and how hard they were throwing. He can still catch. It's just a matter of, can he grip that baseball enough to throw it, and is he in any discomfort when he throws the ball? And at that point, Mendy was like, if you're still, my assumption is, something along the lines of, if you're still in pain, I'm not going to do anything. Let me not mess around with it, and let's go inside. Let the trainers look at it. You're out of the game. I basically took it away from him. I didn't want to even let him play catch. Now, this is the other thing that I agreed with on the Mendoza front. If Alvarez is not good enough, or he's questioning if he's good enough to even play catch, there's no way he can go be a catcher, the toughest position in all of baseball. He's just not healthy enough to be on the defensive front, and therefore, on the offensive front, he probably also wasn't healthy enough to grip a bat well, let alone grip it enough to actually hit in the major leagues, which is the most difficult thing to do, probably in all of life, let alone all of sports. So, I like what Mendoza said. He didn't want to mess around, didn't want to further the injury, didn't want to test the waters. Instead, he said, let me bring in a healthy Luis Torrens. And although Torrens statistically is worse than Alvarez, at least he is better than a hurt Alvarez. Anyone is better than a hurt player. So, I agree with Mendoza on that front completely. And with that, let's turn it over to our last guy of the day. It is Dan Martin of the New York Post. He's going to add his 2 cents, saying he'll return to New York, that being Alvarez, and get an MRI on the thumb Monday, today. He's getting an MRI. Manager Carlos Mendoza said he was checked out by trainers and initially remained in the game before he was replaced by Luis Torrens to start the 8th. We've heard this. Earlier this year, Alvarez suffered a left hamate fracture. I believe it's a hamate, not really sure. And when he struggled on both sides of the plate coming back from that injury, he was sent down to AAA Syracuse. We discussed this, and we'll discuss it a little bit more. He was down in the minor leagues for about a month and absolutely tore it up down there, and now is tearing it up with the big league club, of course, barring a serious injury. Alvarez also underwent surgery on his left thumb last season. He'd impressed the Mets with both his production and work ethic after the demotion, and his play remained improved after his return to the major league. So all the outlets are completely right. There's been a bad history of Alvy with these hand injuries. Let's look at the transaction list. At the bottom, you will see that April 20th, 2024 injury when the Mets placed him on the 10-day IL with a left thumb sprain. Then you move up a little bit. He was finally activated on June 11th, so he spent about 2 months on the injured list. And then to begin this season, he was dealing with a problem in the offseason, didn't play in spring training, and there it is. The Mets placed Francisco Alvarez on the 10-day injured list, retroactive to March 24th, with a hamate fracture, not really sure. I'm not a doctor. Google, however, could be a doctor. They say that the hamate is a carpal bone situated on the lower outside edge of the hand. It has a hook-shaped projection on the palmar side to which muscles of the little finger are attached. Now, if anyone understands what that means, props to you. I don't really understand what that means much, but it doesn't sound good, and that wasn't a good injury. He obviously dealt with it. He came back a month later, exactly a month later, but simply wasn't himself. He has been scorching hot of late, however, and look at this. When he came back, 190 in the month of April for his batting average, 250 in May, June it was at 238. That OPS was barely above 700 in any given month. He wasn't good whatsoever. In fact, he was so bad that he got sent back down to AAA, like we all know. I made a video on this way back when it actually happened. He got sent down to AAA, and he wasn't producing. At the big league level, he had a 236 batting average, 319 OBP, just a 333 slugging. That's not anywhere near where Francisco Alvarez needs to be. His OBP was basically the same as his slugging, which is terrible for a guy who is a hitter in terms of slugging. He gets his extra base hits, he gets his home runs, he's a power hitter. for a combined OPS of 652, just 3 home runs and 11 RBIs and 10 runs scored. However, he went down to AAA, tore it up in AAA, got healthy, got the mentality down, got whatever he needed down with the coaches up in Syracuse, and now is back with the big league club. He went 3 for 4 with 2 runs scored and RBI last night, and since he is now up to a 265 batting average, 349 OBP, 438 slugging, so that slugging went up by over 100 for a 787 OPS. That also went up by over 100, about 130 points. 7 home runs, so 4 RBIs since, 24 home runs since, 24 RBIs and 24 runs. Thanks to, since he is returning, a 20 for 62 stretch. That's a 323 batting average, 408 OBP, 645 slugging, and a 1.053 OPS since returning from AAA Syracuse. 4 home runs, 13 RBIs, 8 runs scored, and even a triple for a guy who is not necessarily the fastest. So definitely a big blow to the Mets that if he is injured for a long period of time, if it's day-to-day, the Mets escaped and the Mets did fine, and you're happy with a day-to-day prognosis, but I don't see that happening. This seemed a little bit concerning. I don't like when the manager was concerned. Carlos Mendoza, I harp on him for doing so. He's someone that doesn't really show emotion that much. He'll only show emotion when he's getting thrown out of a game and arguing with an umpire. Other than that, in his post-game conferences, he almost never shows emotion, and he's very neutral in the words that he uses, but he ended up saying the word concerning last night, which as a fan concerns me. But again, I'm not a doctor either. I don't want to speculate. Let's see what the MRI says when it comes in. I'll, of course, update you guys here on Mets Digest when we do have that, and we'll see how Francisco Alvarez is in terms of his health, and hopefully, like I've said, he is healthy because he is on such a tear of late since his demotion to AAA. Now, let's go positive here. Let's talk about the positives. The Mets did win a baseball game. They are on a win streak, finally. That seems foreign. And they just won their first series since late July. Now, this was a big reason why. Mark Vientos hit a 3-run homer. And you might say, oh, that's very unsubstantial. He's barely played in the past week. Yes, you're correct. But look at this. The losing streak perfectly correlates with Mark Vientos not hitting home runs. Monday, July 28th. That is when the bad stretch started. 14 of the last 16 games, of course, barring last 2 victories, the victories the last 2 nights. It was a stretch of 14 out of 16 games that they lost, with only wins coming on the 2nd against the Giants and the 12th against the Braves. Mark Vientos, he had a grand slam on that Monday night, the 28th, when the Mets lost 7-6, and then came an implosion, and that's what we've seen since when it comes to the losing streak. Plenty of implosions, but that was the night that it all started when Vientos hit a grand slam. Since Vientos went ice cold, and so did the team. The team started losing. But last night, he had a 3-run homer. And although it doesn't seem that substantial, you hope that that home run not only made him turn around his season, but hopefully it wakes up this New York Met team. And speaking of waking up the team, we got a video coming in just a little bit later today about a slugger on this team that is so vital to the offense and hopefully to the team in terms of producing wins. So we'll talk about that in just a little bit, but hopefully since Vientos went deep, that'll make the Mets go hot. As for this, we have to almost go over it every single day, that being the National League wildcard. Phillies won, so the Mets stay 5 out in the division. The Reds also ended the Milwaukee Brewers stretch of 14 consecutive victories, meaning that the Mets did not gain any ground, but because they won, they didn't lose any ground. So that's today's playoff update. I'll basically have one every single time I make a video for you guys, and that is the update on the Francisco Alvarez injury front. So go down there in the comment section. Let me know what you think. Do you think it's going to be long-term for Alvarez? Do you think it's just day-to-day and the Mets escaped? Let me know your thoughts. Give me your reasonings down below. And, of course, let me know how big of a blow this is, in your opinion, to the Mets, given the statistical and just great production from Francisco Alvarez. So give me your other thoughts down below, but unfortunately, that's all the time I have for you in this update video. Thank you so much, as always, for watching, and let's go Mets!